संसारधावा नललीधलोका त्रणयुकारुण घन घनात्वम् प्रपस्य कल्याण गुणनवास्य वन्दे गुरु श्री चरणरविन्दम् महाप्रभो कीर्तन नित्य गीता वदित्र माध्यम मनसोरसेना रोमांचकंपा सुतरंग भाजो वन्दे गुरु श्री चरणरविन्दम् श्री विग्रहाराधन नित्य नाना श्रृंगार तन मंदिर मर जांदो युक्त सभक्तं शनियंजतोपि वन्दे गुरु श्री चरणरविन्दम् चतुर्विधा श्री भगवत प्रसाद स्वदवर्ण तृप्तन हरि भक्त संगन कृत्वैव तृप्तिं भजत सदैव वन्दे गुरु श्री चरणरविन्दम् श्री राधिका माधवयोरपारा माधुर्य लीला गुणरूप नाम्नाम् प्रतिशनाश्वादन लोलोपाश्या वन्दे गुरु श्री चरणरविन्दम् निकुंजयूनो रतिकेली सिद्धै ये अलभीर्युक्तिरपि शुनया तत्रातिदक्षरतिबल्लभाष्या वन्दे गुरु श्री चरणरविन्दम् साक्षाद्धरित्विना समस्तशास्त्रे युक्तस्तथा भवित एव साध्भिः किन्तु प्रभोया प्रिय एव तास्या वन्दे गुरु श्री चरणरविन्दम्
प्रभोया प्रिय एव तास्या वन्दे गुरु श्री चरणरविन्दम्
यस्य प्रसाद भगवत् प्रसादो यस्य प्रसाद न गति कुतोऽपि ध्यायस्तुभं तस्य यस्य त्रिसन्ध्यं वन्दे गुरु श्रीचरणरविन्दम् ध्यायस्तुभं तस्य यस्य त्रिसन्ध्यं वन्दे गुरु श्रीचरणरविन्दम् नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रस्थाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामी इति नामिने
कृष्णप्रस्थाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामी इति नामिने
नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषा शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यादिशतारिणे
नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यादिशतारिणे
हरे कृष्णा हरे श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैता गदाधर शिवकरी गौर भक्तवृंदा Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada.
Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada.
Nitya Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitya Gaura Hari Bol.
Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitya Gaura Hari Bol. Turn these lights on. Turn these lights on. Namamishvaram Sachidanandarupam Lasatkundalam Gokule Bhajamanam.
Namamishvaram Sachidanandarupam Lasatkundalam Gokule Bhajamanam.
Yashoda Biyolu Kaladavamanam Aram Dristam Adyanta Tojudya Gopya.
Yashoda Viyolu
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Rudam tamuhurnetra yugmam rijatam Taram bhuja yugmena satanka netram Muhuswasa kampa chirekanka kanta Sthitai gravam damodaram bhakti badam Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Iti Trikswalila Birananda Kunde Swagosamni Mahajantyam Akyapayanta Tadiyesita Gesu Bhakta Chidatvam Punakramatastam Satariti Vande Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Varam deva moksham na mokshavadim va nachanyam rineham vari sadapiha. Varam deva moksham na mokshavadim va nachanyam rineham vari sadapiha. Idam teva punata gopala balam Sada me mana bhavavita gopnam Sada me mana savirastam kimanyay Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare 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 Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Nidam te mukam bojam ajnanta nilan, Pitam kuntalai stikta raktascha gopya.
Idam te mukham bojam anyanta nile, Idam kundale snigdharam tajagopya.
Muhushchumbitam bimba raktam darame, Manasavirastam alam lakshalabha.
Muhuchumitam nimbarasadharam me, Manasavirasthamanam lakshanam me.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Namo Deva Damodara Ananta Vishnu, Prasida Prabodhuka Jalabdi Magna.
Namo Deva Damodar Ananta Vishnu, Prasida Prabodhuka Jalabhimagnam.
Kripa Dristi Vityati Dinam Pradanu, Gihani Samamajnam Ediakshi Jistya.
Kripa Dristi Vrishyati Dinam Bhatanu, Dehane Shamamagnam Vidyakti Vrishya.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Kuvera Atma Jobada Yudmaiva Yadvad, Tvaya Mochito Bhakti Vajogita Cha.
Kuvera Madhavadam Devayadva, Tvaya Mocheto Bhakti Vajavitauja.
Tata Prema Bhaktin Swakamaya Prayacha, Namokshigraho Mesti Damodareya.
Tata Prema Bhakti Satame Prayacha, Namo Kriyeho Mesti Damodareha.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna
Namaste Studamne Spura Dipti Damne Padiodarayata Vishwashadamne
Namaste Sudamne Suhadipidamne Padiodarayata Vishwashadamne
Namo Radhikaya Tvadiya Priyaya Namo Nantalilaya Devaya Tubhyam
Namo Radhikaye Tvadiya Priyaye Namo Anjalilaya Devaya Tubhyam
Namo Radhikaya Tvadiya Priyaya Namo Nantalilaya Devaya Tubhyam
Namo Radhikaye Tvadiya Priyaye Namo Nandalilaya Devaya Tubhyam
Namo Radhikaya Tvaya Priyaya Namo Nantalilaya Devaya Tubhyam
Namo Radhikaye Tvadiya Priyaye Namo Nandalilaya Devaya Tubhyam
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jaya Radha, Nilamadha Radha, Nilamadha Radha, Bolo. Jaya Radha, Nilamadha Radha, Nilamadha Radha. Jaya Radha, Nilamadha Radha, Nilamadha Radha. Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Shri Radhe, Jaya. Bola Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Nitai Gora Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Nitai Gora Hari Bo, Nitai Gora Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Gora Hari Bo, Nitai Gora Hari Bo. Jayom Vishnupad Paramansa Pararajikachasta Tarasatarishi Shri Srimad Divine Grace Sri Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavindra Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem Shri Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasudeva Gaura Bhaktavinda ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Sam Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan ki jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Shri Mayapura Dham ki jai. Jagannath Puri Dham ki jai. Tulasi Devi ki jai. Bhakti Devi ki jai. Ganga Maya ki jai. Jamuna Maya ki jai. Samaveda Bhaktavinda ki jai. Damodarastakam ki jai, Harinam Sankirtan ki jai, Nitai Gaura Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotee, all glories to the assembled devotee, all glories to the assembled devotee, all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guranga, all glories to His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Namo Om Spirit. You want to chant? Okay.
Namaste Narasimhaya. Bahir Narasimha, Hridaye Narasimha. Narasimha Madim Sharanam Prapade. Tava Kara Kamalavare Naka Adbhuta Shingam Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanu Bringam Keshavadrita Nara Hari Rupa Jaya Jagadish Hare Jaya Jagadish Hare Jaya Jagadish Hare. Keshavadrita Nara Hari Rupa Jaya Jagadish Hare Jaya Jagadish Hare Jaya Jagadish Hare.
Keshavadita Narahari Rupa Jaya Jagadish Hare Jaya Jagadish Hare Jaya Jagadish Hare.
Jaya Narasimha Dev, Jaya Narasimha
Shemitah Bhagavatam ki jai. Vrindaye Tulsideva Priyaye Keshavasya cha Vishnu Bhakti Pradidevi Satyavrataya Namo Namaha. Vrindaye Tulsideva Priyaye Keshavasya cha Vishnu Bhakti Pradidevi Satyavrataya Namo Namaha. Vrindaye Tulsideva Priyaye Keshavasya cha Vishnu Bhakti Pradidevi Satyavrataya Namo Namaha. Vrindaye Tulsideva Maharani ki jai.
Namo Namo Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namo Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namo Radha Krishna Shiva Pavo Eyo Vilasi Radha Krishna Shiva Pavo Eyo Vilasi Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namo Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namo Jai Tumara Sharanalai Taravancha Purnao Kripa Kori Karatare Brindavana Vasi Tumi Kripa Kori Karatare Vrindavana Vasi Morai Ya Vilas Vilas Kunje Dio Bao Nayane Heribo Sadai Jogala Ruparasi Naminayane he ribo sadoi jogalorupa rasi. Eni vedana dhara shakira no gata koro. Shivaya de koro diye koro nija dasi. Ina Krishna dase koi eye namora hoi. Shri Radha Govinda preme sada ye nabasi. Shri Radha Govinda preme sada ye nabasi. Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namo. Yani Shapapani Brahmachari Kanisha Tane Tane Pranashanti Pradakshina Pade Pade Shapapane Brahma Tarikanisha Tani Tani Pranasanti Pradakshina Pade Pade
Yani Gani Chapapani Brahma Tarikanisha Tani Tani Pranasanti
Jani Kani Chapapani Brahma Atarikanisha Tani Tani Pranashanti Pradakshina Pade Pade
Yani Kani Chapapani Tani Tani Pranasanti
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Ramo Ramo, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Vrinda Devi, Tulsi Maharani Jai, Vrinda Devi. Tulsi Maharani, Netai Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Bol Hari Bol.
Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Tulsi Devi Maharani ki jai, Vrindaye Tulsi Devai, Priyaye Krishna Vaishna cha, Vishnu Bhakti Padi Devi Sachirataya Namo Namaha. Vrindaye Tulsi Deva Priyaye Krishna Vaishya cha, Vishnu Bhakti Padi Devi Satyavata Namo Namaha. Vrindaye Tulsi Deva Priyaye Krishna Vaishya cha, Vishnu Bhakti Padi Devi Satyavata Namo Namaha. Vrindaye Tulsi Devi Maharani ki jai. Namaste Saraswati Devi. Gauravani Pacharini, Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paskatya Disatani. O Tulsi, beloved of Krishna, I bow before you again and again. My desire is to obtain the service of Shri Radha and Krishna. Whoever takes shelter of you has his wishes fulfilled. Bestowing your mercy upon him, you make him a resident of Vrindavan. My desire is that you also grant me residence, and pleasure grows as Sri Vrindavana Dham. Thus, within my vision, I will always behold the beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower of the cowherd damsels of Raja. Please give me the privilege of devotional service, and make me your own maidservant. This very fallen and lowly servant of Krishna prays, may always tremendous love Shri Radha and Govinda Tulsi Devi Maharani ki jai.
Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakari Vaudha Nija Sarva Shaktis Tatra Pitanyamita Shmaranina Kala Ita Drishitava Kripaya Bhagavan Mamapi Durdhaiva Midrishamya Janina Muraga Trinarapi Sunichena Tarorapi Saishnuna
Amanina Manadena Kirtanya Sadahari Nadanam Najanam Sundarim Kavitamba Jagadisha Kamaye Mama Janmani Janmani Sware Bhavatat Bhakti Rahaituki Twayi Ai Inanda Tanuchaklikaram Patitamam Vishame Bhavambudo Kripaya Tava Padapankaja Stita Turisat Visam Vichintaya Nayanam Galadasrudaya Vadanam Gadgadarudaya Jira Pulakani Sitam Bapu Kada Tavanamagrahane Bhavishyati Yugayitam Nimesena Chaksusapa Vrasayitam Sunyayitam Jagat Sarvam Govinda Virahiname Aslishyava Padaratam Pilastimam Adasanam Marmahato Karotuva Yata tata vavidatu lampato mat prananatastu saeva na paraha. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Shekhyastakam ki
Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutali Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nitanamani. Namaste Saraswati Devi Guruvani Pacharini Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paskatya Desatarine.
Glory to
Shri Krishna Sankirtan, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large, because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss, and it enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we are always anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to the living beings, and thus you have hundreds of millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names you have invested all your transcendental energies. There are not even hard and fast rules regarding these names. O my Lord, out of kindness you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names, but I am so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than a straw in the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotional service birth after birth. O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor, yet somehow or other I have fallen into this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up, and when will the hairs on my body stand on end at the recitation of your holy name? O Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I am feeling all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna is my Lord, and he shall remain so, even if he handles me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord, unconditionally. Shri Chaitanya Siksastakam Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutani Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nitinamani. Namaste Saraswati Devi Guruvani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paskatya Desatarine.
So the 10 offenses in matter of chanting the holy name of the Lord should be avoided. They are as follows.
To blaspheme devotees who dedicate their lives to propagating the holy names of the Lord. To consider the names of the demigods like Lord Shiva or Lord Brahma to be equal to or independent names of Lord Vishnu. To disobey the orders of the spiritual master. To blaspheme the Vedic literature or literature in pursuance to the Vedic version. To consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna as imagination. To give some interpretation on the holy name of the Lord. To commit sinful activities on the strength of chanting the holy name of the Lord. Consider the chanting of Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which are offered in the Vedas as fruitive activities of karma kanda. To instruct the faithless person about the glories of the holy name. To not have complete faith in the chanting of holy names, and to maintain material attachments even after understanding so many instructions in this matter. It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be a Vaishnava must carefully guard against these 10 offenses in order to quickly achieve the desired success. Krishna Prema. Now let us offer our most humble obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. They are just like desire trees that can fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Vanchakalpa terabhyascha kripa sindhubhyeva patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha vaishnava thakur ki jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutali Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Devi Guruvani Pacharini Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paskati Desatarine. Shemitah Bhagavatam Grantaraja Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutali Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nitinamani. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paschatya Desatarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Srimad Bhagavatam Grantaraja Ki Jai. Canto 2, Chapter 8, verse number 4. Shinvata Shraddhaya Nityam Grinatascha Swachestitam Kalena Natidirgena Bhagavan Vishate Hridi. Shinvata, of those who hear, Shraddhaya, in earnestness, Nityam, regularly, always, Grinate, Nilata, taking the matter, Cha, also, Swachestitam, seriously by one's own endeavor, Kalena, duration, Na, not, Ati, Dirgena, very prolonged time, Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead, Shri Krishna, Visate, becomes manifest, Hridi, within one's heart. Translation by Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Persons who hear Srimad Bhagavatam regularly and are always taking the matter very seriously will have the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna manifest in their hearts within a short time. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Cheap devotees or materialistic devotees of the Lord are very much desirous to see the Lord personally without meeting the requisite qualifications. Such third-grade devotees should know well that material attachment and seeing the Lord face to face cannot go together. It is not such a mechanical process that the professional Bhagavatam reciters can do the job on behalf of the third-grade materialistic pseudo-devotees. The professional men are useless in this connection because they are neither self-realized nor interested in the liberation of the audience. They are simply interested in maintaining the material establishment of family attachment and earning some material benefits out of the profession. Maharaja Parikshit had no more than 7 days to live, but for others, Maharaj Parikshit personally recommends that one hear Srimad Bhagavatam regularly, nityam, meaning always, eternally, always by one's own effort and with serious devotion also. That will help one to see the Lord, Sri Krishna, manifested in one's heart within no time. The pseudo-devotee, however, pseudo means false. The pseudo-devotee, however, is very anxious to see the Lord according to his whims, not making any serious effort to hear Srimad Bhagavatam regularly and without detachment from material benefit. That is not the way recommended by an authority like Maharaja Parikshit, who heard and benefited by hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Persons who hear Srimad Bhagavatam regularly and are always taking the matter very seriously will have the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, manifested in their hearts within a short time. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Gaura Premanandi Hari Bol. So here we see the absolute stress or the absolute focusing on hearing Srimad Bhagavatam every day with submission and asking important questions and offering service and being very focused to hear every word and understand every concept that's being explained by Sukadeva Goswami and Krishna himself and his devotees. So, unless we develop this taste for hearing, and how do you develop the taste for hearing? The taste for hearing in Sanskrit is called ruchi. Where does ruchi come from? Well, it begins by appreciating the activities of the devotees who are engaged in spreading Krishna consciousness. And then number two, relishing the association of devotees on a regular basis and learning from them through association the culture of Krishna consciousness, how we do things in the service of Krishna. And then number three, accepting initiation by a bona fide Shiksha or Diksha Guru. We have only one Diksha Guru, but we can have several or more Shiksha Gurus. And they are equal in importance in the life of a devotee. It's not that, oh, I only listen to my Diksha Guru, I don't listen to anybody else. Well, that is nonsense. That is like standing on one foot on a tight wire and trying to balance yourself forever. You're going to eventually fall down. One has to have the double teaching from Shiksha Guru and Diksha Guru, not just Diksha Guru. So then when one is initiated, one begins to anartha nivriti, get rid of all bad habits by the teaching and strict adherence. The Guru will maintain, and Shiksha and Diksha Gurus will maintain for the disciple. And as one purifies their bad habits, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, in other words, there is a way to do eating, sleeping, mating, and defending in a purified way, but most people do it in a contaminated way, like animals. So therefore, they don't really make any spiritual advancement. They're just languishing in states of illusion, thinking that everything is all right, although death is following them at every moment. And then when those anarthas, or bad habits, are cleaned away, wiped out, then one develops nishtha, very, very strong faith that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that Srila Prabhupada is a pure devotee of the Lord, very exceptional thing, that we have met him through his books and through association of his devotees, and that Prabhupada becomes very significant, or most significant person in our life, next to Krishna, and we become determined to follow the instructions that Prabhupada has given in his purports, how to follow Krishna consciousness and advance in Krishna consciousness. And then one appreciates all of what that Prabhupada has done. He's written all these books, and they're all authoritative. There's no nonsense, no mistakes in them, in his purports. They're all focused on how to go back to Godhead by becoming a sincere devotee of the Lord. And even further than that, one doesn't even want to go back to Godhead. One will do anything the Lord wants him to do, or the spiritual master wants him to do. If that means staying in the material world, then that's just fine. Does that mean go to hell and preach? Yes, because anywhere in the whole creation one can go, it can be even hell, and make devotees if they are completely surrendered and completely dependent on the Lord. And then after nishtha comes ruchi. Ruchi is really strong taste for hearing. In other words, if one doesn't hear Bhagavan and Bhagavad Gita and Shemitah Bhagavatam and engage actively in the class by asking questions and discussing points and getting things cleared, they are missing something. It's just like someone who looks forward to going to a famous restaurant to eat. They're always thinking about it and planning on what they're going to order and this thing and that thing. Or someone who wants to go to the Super Bowl, and they plan for it a year ahead of time, try and get the tickets and everything. It's like going to Vaikunta for them, the Super Bowl. Of course, it's very boring, and a lot of gross things happen there. But the devotee develops this tremendous taste, that they cannot do without, and they must come every day and hear. And this is what's being recommended here. Verse after verse, Lord Brahma is emphasizing the importance of hearing every day. And as I said before, Prabhupada actually wanted class 3 times a day, not just once a day or twice a day, but 3 times a day, morning, afternoon, and evening, so that now you can see Muhammad, when he says that people must come do their namas, their prayers, 5 times a day, and remember the Lord, and remember Allah. So that's a good thing, actually. And the strict Muslims, when the time comes, it's 5 times a day, they'll stop what they're doing and they'll get their little prayer rug and they'll pray to Allah. What they're praying sometimes it's nonsense. Let the Hindus die and let America be destroyed. But that's not all of them are like that. But at least they're praying, saying something to God and remembering God throughout the day. And they also have to wake up early, like 5 o'clock in the morning, and go to the first, go to this mosque and do their prayers. And then at noontime, they have to go to the mosque. And in the evening, they have to go to the mosque also. They'll go to the mosque sometimes 2 or 3 times a day. I've seen this myself in Navadvip, in Mayapur. There are at least 3 Muslim mosques there, maybe more. And I went to one at noontime. It's full of people praying, So they go in the morning, the afternoon, and the evening. So we should be very interested in this hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. All problems of life will go away by regularly hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. Now, in this purport, Prabhupada is really very, very emphatically talking about what's called a cheap devotee. A cheap devotee. The person's a devotee, but they're a cheap devotee. So he starts with that. Cheap devotees, or materialistic devotees of the Lord, are very much desirous to see the Lord personally without meeting the requisite qualifications. Yeah, so they'll go to phony gurus and phony Bhagavat Saptaha to hear, but basically for their own sense gratification, not really to make any spiritual advancement. And they'll be attracted by these cheaters. And because they have materialistic goals through Krishna consciousness. And they're very much desirous to see the Lord without meeting. What's the requisite qualification? Well, it's constant engagement in the association of Lord Sri Krishna, which frees one from the contamination of material qualities. Contamination by the material qualities is the cause of repeated birth and death. And liberation from material qualities is transcendence. Maharaj Pariksit was now a realized soul by the secret of liberation. Now, we discussed this yesterday, but we'll go over it again. What is the secret of liberation? Well, Prabhupada explains that right in the beginning of the purport of the previous verse, 283. To be fully engaged in hearing the transcendental narration described in the text of Srimad Bhagavatam means to constantly associate with the Supreme Soul, Sri Krishna. And to constantly associate with the Supreme Lord Krishna means to be liberated from the qualities of matter. Lord Krishna is like the sun, and the material contamination is like darkness. As the presence of the sun dissipates darkness, constant engagement in the association of the Lord Sri Krishna frees one from the contamination of the material qualities. Contamination by the material qualities is the cause of repeated birth and death, and liberation from material qualities is transcendence. Maharaj Pariksit was now a realized soul by the secret of liberation through the grace of Sukadeva Goswami, for the latter, meaning Sukadeva Goswami, had informed the king that the highest perfection of life is to be in remembrance of Narayana at the end of life. Maharaj Parikshit was destined to give up his body at the end of 7 days, and thus he decided to continue remembering the Lord by his association with the topics of Srimad Bhagavatam, and thus to quit his body in full consciousness of the presence of the Lord Shri Krishna, the Supreme Soul. The hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam performed by professional men is different from the transcendental hearing of Maharaj Parikshit. Maharaj Parikshit was a soul realized in the absolute truth. Shri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. The fruit of materialist is not a realized soul. He wants to derive some material benefit from his so-called hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam. Undoubtedly, such an audience hearing Srimad Bhagavatam from the professional men can derive some material benefit as they desire, but that does not mean that such a pretense of hearing Srimad Bhagavatam for a week is as good as the hearing of Maharaj Parikshit. It is the duty of the sane persons to hear Srimad Bhagavatam from a self-realized soul and not be duped or cheated by professional men. One should continue such hearing till the end of one's life. That means every day, right up to the last day of one's life, one should be hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. And thus be liberated simply by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. Simply by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, one can be liberated. Maharaj Parikshit had already given up all his connections with his kingdom and family and the most attractive features of materialism. Yes, if you have a kingdom and you have good family, then that's very, very attractive. That means you're a material success, but that could mean that there's spiritual failure. There's a difference between material success and spiritual success. But still, he was conscious of his material body. He wanted to be free of such bondage also by the constant association of the Lord. One has a constant association of the Lord by regularly hearing Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. So, this is further explained in the Srimad Bhagavatam, 1st canto, 8th chapter, by Kunti Devi. Srimati Kunti Devi said, O Krishna, I offer my obeisances unto you because you are the original personality and are unaffected by the qualities of the material world. You are existing both within and without everything, yet you are invisible to all. So, this is the dilemma for materialists. Krishna is invisible for them. They don't see him. When they see the deity, they don't see Krishna. But they want to see God. They say, "You show me God, and I'll believe." But they don't want to do what's necessary in order to see Krishna. The Srimad Bhagavatam is the incarnation of Krishna in this age, in Kali Yuga. Lord Chaitanya comes, but not as Krishna, as he comes as the devotee of Krishna. And very few people recognize who he is. Even when Krishna came 5,000 years ago, very few people recognized him. You could count them on your hands. There were 5 Pandavas and a few others, and that was it. So seeing is not believing. Now scientists, they base everything on their seeing. That's why they hardly understand anything about what they're seeing, and they understand nothing, absolutely zero, about the spiritual world or Krishna. So their seeing is more or less useless. Yeah, they can make things, but they can't free themselves from the cycle of birth and death. So their seeing as believing is nonsense, because there are many things you can't see that exist. And the most important thing that exists that we don't see with these imperfect eyes is Krishna himself. But you can see Krishna by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. And then you can find out about electromagnetic waves by hearing the science of electromagnetism. You didn't discover it, and it's something you can't see, but you can see the result of it in the form of cell phones and televisions and radio and so forth. So there are many things we don't see. There are more things we don't see than we do see. In fact, the scientists say, the astrologers, not the astrologers, but the astronomers and nuclear physicists, they say that we only see 4% of the material universe. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10%. The rest, 85 to 90%, we don't see it. They say that. Well, what are they talking about? Well, obviously, the Shemitah Bhagavatam explains that there are 7 coverings of the material universe. Something like an onion. It has so many coverings, right? And what are those seven coverings? There's earth, water, fire, air, mind, and intelligence. Earth, water, fire, air, mind, and intelligence, right? And each one is 10 times bigger than the other one. And therefore, most of the universe is unseen. And they're trying to see it, but they're failing. Now, why is there so much covering of the earth? Because look at the ocean. The ocean is made of H2O, water. Where did all the H come from, and where did all the O come from? You tell me. You see, that's why the coverings of the earth are full of these fundamental materials: earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, and intelligence. So therefore, the scientists have an inkling of it, but they can't see it. But they know that it has to exist. You see. So there's many things that the scientists don't see. There's many things that they can theoretically understand, but can't prove because seeing is believing for them. They keep trying to prove it, and it remains evasive to them because they have imperfect senses. Therefore, when you talk about the spiritual world, you have to learn about it by hearing, because you're not going to be able to see it. I mean, talk about Krishna, you have to learn about Krishna by hearing, because, as it says here, you are existing both within and without everything, yet you are invisible to all. Let's see how smart, see how elevated a devotee Kunti Devi is. And in the purport, Prabhupada says, Srimati Kunti was quite aware that Krishna is the original personality of Godhead, although he was playing the part of her nephew. Such an enlightened lady could not commit a mistake by offering obeisances unto her nephew. Therefore, she addressed him as the original Purusha, beyond the material cosmos. Although all living entities are also transcendental, they are neither original nor infallible. The living entities are apt to fall down under the clutches of material nature, but the Lord is never like that. In the Vedas, therefore, he is described as the chief amongst all living entities, Nityo Nityanam, Chaitanas Chaitananam. Then again, he is addressed as Ishvara, or the controller. The living entities, or the demigods like Chandra and Surya, are also to some extent Ishvara, but none of them is the supreme Ishvara, or the ultimate controller. The Lord is the Parameshwara, or the supersoul. He is both within and without. So when it says within, he's inside our body, in our heart, as the Paramatma. He's outside of our body as the Virat Rupa, and it contains everything. Everything's contained within his gigantic body. And he's also independently playing with the cows, taking them out to pasture. They didn't need fencing and barns and things like that because the cows would be taken out to pasture. And they would go in different, there's different forests in Vrindavan. They would go to this forest one day and then that forest another day. And the cows always had fresh grass. And sometimes they would go to Govardhan Hill or Govardhan Parvat and get fresh grass there. So this taking them to grazing, it eliminates the whole idea of fencing and buying hay and all that stuff, because they naturally get sweet grass because everything was working properly in the time of Krishna, in the time of Lord Rama, in the time of King Parikshit and King Yudhisthira, because they were all pious kings or pious leaders of society. So when the king is a pious person or a devotee, then everything works nicely in that kingdom. So, although Krishna was present before Kunti as her nephew, he was also within her and everyone else. In the Bhagavad Gita 15:15, the Lord says, I am situated in everyone's heart, and only due to me one remembers, forgets, and is cognizant or knowledgeable, etc. Through all the Vedas I am to be known, because I am the compiler of the Vedas and I am the teacher of the Vedas. Queen Kunti affirms that the Lord, although both within and without all living beings, is still invisible. The Lord is, so to speak, a puzzle for the common man. Queen Kunti experienced personally that Lord Krishna was present before her, yet he entered within the womb of Uttara to save her embryo from the attack of Aswatthama's Brahmastra. Kunti herself was puzzled about whether Sri Krishna is all-pervasive or localized. In fact, he is both, but he reserves the right of not being exposed to persons who are not surrendered souls. The checking curtain is called Maya energy of the Supreme Lord, and it controls the limited vision of the rebellious souls. It is explained as follows. In the next verse, this is 1:8:18, now 1:8:19. Being beyond the range of limited sense perception, you are the eternally irreproachable factor covered by the curtain of deluding energy. You are invisible to the foolish observer, exactly as an actor dressed as a player is not recognized. And in the purport, Prabhupada says, in the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Sri Krishna affirms that less intelligent persons mistake him to be an ordinary man like us, and thus they deride him, they make fun of him. The same is confirmed herein by Queen Kunti. The less intelligent persons are those who rebel against the authority of the Lord. Such persons are known as asuras. The asuras cannot recognize the Lord's authority. When the Lord himself appears amongst us as Rama, Nishinga, Varaha, or in his original form as Krishna, he performs many wonderful acts which are humanly impossible, as we shall find in the 10th canto of this great literature. Lord Sri Krishna exhibited his humanly impossible activities even from the days of his lying on the lap of his mother. He killed the Putana witch, although she smeared her breast with poison just to kill the Lord. The Lord sucked her breast like a natural baby, and he sucked out her very life also. Similarly, he lifted the Govardhana hill, just as a boy picks up a frog's umbrella, and stood several days continuously just to give protection to the residents of Vrindavan. These are some of the superhuman activities that the Lord described in the authoritative Vedic literatures like the Puranas, Itihasas, or histories, and Upanishads. He has delivered wonderful instructions in the shape of the Bhagavad Gita. He has shown marvelous capacities as a hero, as a householder, as a teacher, and as a renouncer. He is accepted as the Supreme Personality Godhead by such authoritative personalities as Vyasa, Devala, Asita, Narada, Madhava, Sankara, Ramanuja, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Jiva Goswami, Vishwanatha Chakravarti, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, and all other authorities of the line. He himself has declared as much in many places of the authentic literatures. And yet, there is a class of men with demoniac mentality who are always reluctant to accept the Lord as the supreme absolute truth. This is partially due to their poor fund of knowledge and partially due to their stubborn obstinacy, which results from various misdeeds in the past and present. Such persons could not recognize Lord Sri Krishna even when he was present before them. Another difficulty is that those who depend more on their imperfect senses cannot realize him as the Supreme Lord. Such persons are like the modern scientists. They want to know everything by their experimental knowledge, but it is not possible to know the Supreme Person by imperfect experimental knowledge. He is described herein as adhoksaja, or beyond the range of experimental knowledge. All our senses are imperfect. We claim to observe everything and anything, but we must admit that we can observe things under certain material conditions only, which are also beyond our control. The Lord is beyond the observation of sense perception. Queen Kunti accepts this deficiency of the conditioned soul, especially of the women class, who are less intelligent. For less intelligent men, there must be such things as temples, mosques, or churches, so that they may begin to recognize the authority of the Lord and hear about him from authorities in such holy places. For less intelligent men, this beginning of spiritual life is essential, and only foolish men decry this establishment of such places of worship, which are required to raise the standard of spiritual attributes for the mass of people. For less intelligent persons, bowing down before the authority of the Lord, as generally done in the temples, mosques, or churches, is as beneficial as it is for the advanced devotees to meditate upon him by active service. Okay, so then the next verse. See, that's why I say, if eventually, I hope not, the GBC decides to sanitize Prabhupada's purports by taking out everything that they think is insulting to modern people, they're going to have to take out 1/3 of what he's written. Like in this purport, and he says that Queen Kunti accepts this deficiency of the conditioned soul, especially of the women class. She's also a woman, who are less intelligent. But that doesn't mean only women are less intelligent. Then he says, for less intelligent men, there must be such things as temples, mosques, or churches. Right? So now in the next 2 verses, Prabhupada closes the loop about his so-called pejorative statements about women and men. Right? In that verse, Kunti Devi, and by the way, Kunti Devi is a woman, right? And she is being worshipped by all the men because she's a major authority, one of the greatest authorities on Krishna consciousness. Being beyond the range of limited sense perception, she's talking to Krishna, you are the eternally irreproachable factor covered by the curtain of deluding deluding energy. You are invisible to the foolish observer, exactly as an actor dressed. Okay, I'm sorry. Mixed up the pages. Okay. You yourself descend to propagate the transcendental science of devotional service unto the hearts of the advanced transcendentalists and mental speculators, who are purified by being able to discriminate between matter and spirit. How, then, can we women know you perfectly? So, Kunti is a very, very smart woman and very, very smart devotee. Prabhupada writes, even the greatest philosophical speculators cannot have access to the region of the Lord. It is said in the Upanishads that the supreme truth, the absolute personality of Godhead, is beyond the range of the thinking power of the greatest philosopher. He is unknowable by great learning or by the greatest brain. He is knowable only by one who has his mercy. So tomorrow I'm going to explain how scientists, how one of the greatest scientists, Einstein, was actually a dummy when it comes to spiritual life. He made so many mistakes and made so many declarations that were wrong, flat out wrong about God. And I'm going to explain it so you can understand it. Although he might have been a good scientist, he was a dummy. He was ignorant, self-imposed ignorance because of his arrogance about God. So, Krishna is unknowable by great learning or by the greatest brain. He is knowable only by one who has his mercy. Notice it doesn't say he is knowable by one who has knowledge of him. He says he's knowable by one who has his mercy. Others may go on thinking about him for years together, yet he is unknowable. This very fact is corroborated by the queen, or Queen Kunti, who is playing the part of an innocent woman. Women in general are unable to speculate like philosophers, but they are blessed by the Lord because they believe at once in the superiority and almightiness of the Lord, and thus they offer obeisances without reservation. Whoa, wait a minute. that means women, in a sense, are superior to men who would say, well, I got to see it, I got to study this thing, and I'm not convinced. But wait a minute. Women, especially women that have not been educated in these dumbbell schools that we have, they learned how to sew, they learned how to stitch, they learned how to cook, they learned how to make offerings, they learned how to milk cows, they learned how to churn butter, right? These are the women who easily surrender to the Lord and accept him as the supreme personality of God. Whereas the husband would say, well, wait a minute, we got to study this a little bit more, we got to read this book and that book, and we got to get both sides also, we got to hear what the Mayavadis say too, It could take him many lifetimes to understand Krishna, but the simple woman who is a good mother, who is obedient to her husband, and who's doing what are considered lowly chores, they're better than the speculators, scientists, and philosophers. They are better. Why? Because women in general are unable to speculate like philosophers. Thank God. But they are blessed by the Lord because they believe at once in the superiority and almightiness of the Lord, and thus they offer obeisances without reservation. The Lord is so kind that he does not show special favor only to one who is a great philosopher. He knows the sincerity of purpose. If you understand English, this is a very big concept, sincerity of purpose. For this reason only, women generally assemble in great number in any sort of religious function. In every country and in every sect of religion, it appears that the women are more interested than the men. This simplicity of acceptance of the Lord's authority is more effective than showing insincere religious fervor. Well, you have to understand English to see the power of these words. Not everybody understands English. They can speak it, but it doesn't mean they understand it. So when he's talking about sincerity of purpose, and then he's talking about insincere religious fervor. Fervor is a word, it's something like a fever, We have a fever, it's all-encompassing. So fervor is like usually people who are fanatics, they have this insincere religious fervor, right? That's why they go and kill people, because they don't really have sincere love for God. They're more overwhelmed by showing that they're more loyal than the king. This is like when a Hindu becomes a Muslim or a Christian, they're more loyal than the other people that have been Muslims or Christians their whole life. They hate Hinduism. They want to destroy Hinduism. They'll do everything possible to make Hinduism disappear. They're more fanatic than the people who've been Christian or Muslim their whole life. They become like demons, full of hatred. They're the worst Christians I ever met in my life. The Hindus that converted to Christianity, they're completely fanatical. But because they want to prove that they're more loyal than the king. So, in the next verse also goes even further. It says, "Let me therefore," Kunti Devi says, "offer my respectful obeisances unto the Lord, who has become the son of Vasudeva, the pleasure of Devaki, the boy of Nanda, and the other cowherd men of Vrindavana, and the enlivener of the cows and the senses." Now look, she's such an elevated devotee. She knows so much about Krishna. And the purport, Prabhupada says, "The Lord, being thus unapproachable by any material assets, out of unbounded and causeless mercy, descends on the earth as he is in order to show his special mercy upon his unalloyed devotees and to diminish the upsurges of the demoniac persons." Queen Kunti specifically adores the incarnation or descent of Lord Krishna above all other incarnations because in this particular incarnation he is more approachable. In the Rama incarnation, he remained a king's son from his very childhood. But in the incarnation of Krishna, although he was the son of a king, he at once left the shelter of his real father and mother, King Vasudeva and Queen Devaki, just after his appearance and went to the lap of Yasodamai to play the part of an ordinary cowherd boy in the blessed Vrajabhumi, which is very sanctified because of his childhood pastimes. Therefore, Lord Krishna is more merciful than Lord Rama. He was undoubtedly very kind to Kunti's brother Vasudeva and the family. Had he not become the son of Vasudeva and Devaki, Queen Kunti could not claim him to be her nephew and thus address Krishna, because she's Vasudeva's sister, right? Queen Kunti could not claim him to be her nephew and thus address Krishna in parental affection. But Nanda and Yasoda are more fortunate because they could relish the Lord's childhood pastimes, which are more attractive than all other pastimes. There is no parallel to his childhood pastimes as exhibited at Vrajabhumi, meaning Vrindavan, which are the prototypes of his eternal affairs in the original Krishna Loka, described as the Chintamani Dhamma, or in the Brahma Samhita. Lord Sri Krishna descended himself at Vrajabhumi with all his transcendental entourage and paraphernalia. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu therefore confirmed that no one is as fortunate as the residents of Vrajabhumi, and specifically the cowherd girls who dedicated their everything for the satisfaction of the Lord. His pastimes with Nanda and Yasoda, and his pastimes with the cowherd men, and especially with the cowherd boys and the cows, have caused him to be known as Govinda. Lord Krishna as Govinda is more inclined to the brahmanas and the cows, indicating thereby that human prosperity depends more on these two items, namely Brahminical culture and cow protection. Lord Krishna is never satisfied where these things are lacking. So, does it say here that Lord Krishna is very satisfied by IT and AI? No. He's very satisfied by Brahminical culture and cow protection. And those two items are the tickets to prosperity and peace and happiness in this life and going back to Godhead. So, I'll stop right there. Are there any questions? If not, then who did the homework? Okay, come, Arush. Anybody else? Did you do homework, Shasta? Did you do homework? Okay. Go ahead, Arush. Arush has become a pundit. When he first started 3 years ago, he didn't speak English very well. Now he's become very, very bright, very, very expert. Go ahead.
The question was, read the purport of Srimad Bhagavatam 2.7.43 to 45. Do some research and give some egregious examples that support the statement made by Srila Prabhupada in the purport. Mental speculations by adding some dozens of ifs and maybes cannot aid the advancement of knowledge. On the contrary, such mental speculations will only end in despair by dismissing the case abruptly and declaring the non-existence of God. Supreme Personality of Godhead cannot be understood by mental speculation. The unintelligent people cannot understand Krishna and assume that absolute truth is impersonal. The scientists and philosophers work on the theory of perhaps, maybe, and ifs. This does not lead to advancement of knowledge. The scientists have explained that the Big Bang is the cause of the creation of the universe. The purpose of the Big Bang theory is to make people live an imaginary life of believing that there is no God, there is no life after death, the universe was created by chance, we are a combination of chemicals, and when the body is finished, we are finished. So the scientists say that we should do all the sense gratification right now. Srila Prabhupada talks with some of his disciples and explains how matter is not created by accident. Nothing is accidental. Everything happens by cause and effect.
Take off your mask.
In Bhagavad Gita 10.8, it states, I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. Everything emanates from me. This is the Krishna conscious philosophy. that everything begins from Krishna. Science explains everything in terms of chemicals, but cannot prove that consciousness can be created by mixing some chemicals. Scientists brainwash the general public and create a godless view. They make our mindset as whatever you feel good with is good. Science is supposed to be a process of observation and experiment, but here there is no observation and experiment, but only some vague notions and mental speculation. Similarly, Darwin's theories is also based on speculation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead cannot be understood by scientists or philosophers who speculate that the absolute truth is impersonal. The science of Krishna consciousness can only be understood by surrendering to the Lord, which we can do by following the 9 processes of bhakti. The first step of the 9 processes of bhakti is the most important step, which is hearing from a bona fide spiritual master. Bhagavad Gita 7.24 states, one cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, or his form, quality, or name simply by mental speculation or discussing Vedic literature. One must understand him by devotional service. When one is fully engaged in Krishna consciousness, beginning by chanting the Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, then only can one understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The same context is also explained in Shemitah Bhagavatam 2.7, 43 to 45.
Thank you very much. Excellent. So Arush comes every day, or most days, to the class with his father who sits next to him. And that is the way to educate your kids. If you want them to become devotees, you bring them. And you come with them and sit next to them, and you hear Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. Otherwise, they're going to be hearing 6 to 8 hours a day nonsense, complete nonsense in the school, and associating with nonsense people and watching them eat meat and talk about how great it tastes, and etc. And all that is extremely negative. That's associating with asuras. You become a devotee by associating with genuine devotees and associating with Krishna by hearing about him from genuine devotees every day. If you're going to be hearing nonsense for 6 to 8 hours in schools, then how much should you hear to offset that from hearing from the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam? You see, everything is lopsided. They're getting 6 to 8 hours of hearing nonsense, and most of the kids are not hearing anything every day about Krishna. Just very, very little. And not 6 to 8 hours. So why should your kids be sequestered 6 to 8 hours to hear nonsense, and you don't do anything to help them to hear good sense? You see? So it's a losing proposition. That's why India is failing, and America is failing, because it produces every year hundreds and thousands of atheistic kids. And they go on to be exploited their whole life and be convinced of the material conception of life, that sense gratification and making money are the goal of life. You see, because they've been programmed 8 hours a day for 16 or 24 or 36 years of their education. But of course, everyone ignores that. They think, oh, the Hari Vilas he's an extremist. He's a fanatic. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Huh? Well, we'll see. Phalena Parichita, you judge from the results. If your kids grow up to be materialists, whose fault is it? Is it my fault or is it your fault? You decide. But very good, Arush. Very, very good. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Okay, so now we'll have Aarti. sing.
Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma Bando mui savadhana mate
Bando mui savadhana mate
Jahara prasade bhaye e bhava toriya jaye Jahara prasade Krishna prapti hoye jahan aate
Krishna prapti hoya hoite
Guru mukha padma vakya chiteti koriyo akya Are na kori ho mane asa
Arana koriya mane asa
Shri Guru charane rati Aise utama gati
Shri Guru charane rati Aise utama gati
Je prasade pure sarva asa
Ye prasad pure sarvasa
चक्षुदान दिलो जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से
चक्षुदान दिला जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से
चक्षुदान दिलो जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से
चक्षुदान दिला जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से
दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशितो दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशितो प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाशा जाते प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाशा जाते वेद गाय जहारा चरितो वेद गाय जहारा चरितो श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु आधम जनारा बंधु श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु आधम जनारा बंधु लोके नाथ लोके राजीवाना लोकेनाथ लोके राजीवाना हा हा प्रभु कोरो दया देहो मोरे पद छाया हा हा प्रभु कोरो दया देहो मोरे पद छाया हे बेजास घुषक त्रिभुवाना हे बेजास घुषक त्रिभुवाना प्रभुपाद पतित तपाना जयो प्रभुपदा जयो प्रभुपदा जयो प्रभुपदा श्रीला प्रभुपदा नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रस्थाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामी इति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषा शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यादिशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैता गदाधारा शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंदा
जय श्री कृष्ण
चैतन्य नित्यानंदा हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 रामा राम राम हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे हरे
नित्य गौर हरि बोल हरि बोल नित्य गौर हरि बोल
Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parajika Chasta Tarasatarashi Shishimani's Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Raj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Adanta Vaishnava Vinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Sikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Ki Jai Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Samkunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Shri Mayapura Dham Ki Jai Shri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai Shri Tulasi Devi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Ganga Maya Ki Jai Jamuna Maya ki jai, Samaveda Bhakta Vinda ki jai, Nitai Gora Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotee. All glories to the assembled devotee. All glories to the assembled. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Patita Bhavana ki jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutvi Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami. Namaste Saraswati Devi Guruvani Vichani Namaste. Let's get this started. The lotus feet of our spiritual master are the only way by which we can attain pure devotional service. I bow down to his lotus feet with great awe and reverence. By his grace, one can cross the suffering in the material ocean and attain the mercy of Krishna. I only wish to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. Attachment to his lotus feet perfects and fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth after birth. From him ecstatic prema emanates. By him ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of his character. Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy, friend of the poor, Lord and master of devotees. All masters of mercy. Give us